afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Welcome. Good afternoon, Your Honor. I'm Amanda Carl. I'm the Vice Chair of the TCAJMC. Welcome to Oviedo. Welcome to Duda. Thank you for being here with us today. I'll give you kind of the lay of the land and how we do things. We will all go around, introduce ourselves, tell you where we're from, and then you will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. We'll fire away with questions, and then we'll reserve a minute at the end so that you can make any closing statement. We do have Volusia Exposed here today videoing, so if you wonder what the camera is behind you, that's what that is.
Okay,
Craig?
thank you.
Go ahead.
Craig Dyer, Public Defender's Office, Daytona Beach.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Pedro Brownlee from the Brownlee Law Firm.
Good afternoon, Mr. Renton.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Brett Renton, Schutzenville in Orlando.
Good afternoon, Mr. Renton.
Good afternoon, Andy Bardos at the Gray Robinson Law Firm.
Good afternoon, Mr. Renton.
Although we've known each other for many, many years. Good afternoon, Your Honor. Vince Citro from the Law Offices of Horowitz and Citro.
Good afternoon, Mr. Citro.
I'm David DeArmas, Craig Price and DeArmas, also known
Please go ahead when you're ready.
All right, so I could start by reciting details of my 40-page application, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to take you back to about 1969. I am the ripe old age of about 4, and my father's friend Bill has come to visit us at our home. He's writing a book. He's staying at our guest house for a month or so, and in the evenings he comes over for dinner, and after dinner he and my father debate, is what I'll say. They were both kind of larger than life individuals. They both had a passion for the environment, and they had a passion for law. My father was not a lawyer, but he was raised by lawyers and judges. And I think it was at that moment that I started my love affair with the law, even though my recollection of what they independently discussed is rather fuzzy given my age. But I would sneak out of bed, I would go down the hall, I would listen to the debate. They often disagreed, but in the morning you'd find them in the kitchen with cups of coffee and 4 or 5 newspapers getting ready to load up on information for that evening. It wasn't until many years later that I realized that Uncle Bill was actually William O. Douglas, and that at the time he was still the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. So I do hesitate in some ways to tell you that story because my judicial philosophy is not consistent with Justice Douglas's.
But you can't not tell us that story.
But I could not tell you that story.
Why?
Probably more
Right?
consistent with your father, right?
So, no, they debated, remember that part. But that's, that I am a legal nerd. And I think from that, you can't be raised in a household where your father debates Justice Douglas, and he's the only man in his family not to become a lawyer or judge and really not follow the path that I followed. So that's by way of introduction, because that path has led me to an incredible career as a lawyer, as a judge, and here before all of you for this opportunity.
Judge Higbee, Andy Bardos, I had the pleasure of vetting your application. I had heard only good things about you from the many people that I spoke with, so I don't have many hard-hitting questions to ask.
Okay.
But I guess I'll ask, how does your judicial philosophy differ from Justice Douglas's?
Okay, so I think Justice Douglas was a really impressive individual, but my perception is that many of his rulings came from his emotionality, and that he let his personal feelings interfere with his rulings. That is probably the opposite of how I feel. I believe in an independent judiciary. I believe that in order for that to work, that all 3 branches have their roles, and that a judge's role is to follow the law. And that is the fundamental basis of my judicial philosophy.
When you interpret a statutory or constitutional provision, how do you go about that? What is your method or your process? What sources do you look at? And does it differ depending on whether it's a statutory provision or a constitutional provision?
Well, probably haven't had as much experience as others in constitutional analysis, but I do a lot of statutory analysis. And where I go is what the written word is. I would consider myself to be a textualist, that look at what the words say and what they mean, and looking at it like a reasonable man would look at it, as folks coming in front of me have to depend on what the law is before I feel comfortable making a ruling that regards them. So the plain meaning of what it says is what I will apply to the specific facts and circumstances in the case that's before me.
Is there I'm going to steal a question that I've heard earlier today. Is there a recent decision, say of the U.S. Supreme Court or the Florida Supreme Court, with which you particularly agree or from which you would have dissented? Something you feel strongly was either decided correctly or decided incorrectly?
Well, let's see. I don't know that they've written the opinion yet. It's been a little while since I looked. The Gamble argument, the recent argument before the Supreme Court about the duality of having being able to be prosecuted under the federal system or the state system. I have found the fact that Justice Gorsuch and Justice Ginsburg seem to be aligning to be of particular interest. It would be something that if it goes in the direction I think it may, perhaps could overrule precedent, which is unique. So, you know, I'll be frank in that in closing my division and getting prepared for a new division, I haven't extensively read about that, but it struck my interest because it was a unique alignment of justices, and it was an opinion that I would find interesting and I think may very well be overturned, and if it is, and if there's sufficient basis to do so, then I agree with it.
And finally, the job of an appellate judge is in some ways very different from that of a trial judge. You're working on a panel with three. You're doing a lot of research, which at the trial level you have less time to do perhaps. So how do you think that you would function on an appellate court given the fact that you'll have opinions to write and law clerks to work with, two other members of the panel? How do you see yourself operating within that very different context?
Well, first, that's a dream, considering I don't really have any of that at the moment. We share staff attorneys. It would be wonderful to be able to have the opportunity to research. You know, as I've said, I'm a self-proclaimed legal nerd. I would love that opportunity. I think that that's what I miss as a trial judge, that I enjoyed as a lawyer, to be able to fully brief and research when you're dealing in the trial trenches. There is a large number of cases that you have to deal with quickly, and I would welcome that opportunity. I would welcome the opportunity for collegial debate, for the ability to, you know, at times disagree without being disagreeable, and to work with colleagues and to work with a record.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prentice.
What do you think about PCAs?
Well, I think they have their place. Certainly if the law is well established and settled, you know, they have their place. So do citation opinions. You don't want to necessarily muddy the law if it's clear already, but it's certainly not a crutch to avoid work.
Do you think it's been used as a crutch to avoid work?
I don't know, because I'm not in that position. But I do know that when I receive a PCA, there are times when I'm very happy with it, and then there are times when I wish there was more guidance. And I would hope that if I'm given that opportunity, that I would exercise discretion in determining which was which, and appropriately give the direction when needed, and appropriately stick with either a citation or PCA, and that was the foundation of the law.
So you've talked about getting opinions from the Fifth, and obviously when you are reversed, the holding is the holding, and you have to follow the holding, but when you get a reversal, how does it impact how you approach your job as a judge? And of course, I ask this in the light of, if you go to the PCA, you'll be grading papers, but your papers will still be getting graded by the federal courts and of course the Florida Supreme Court. So how does that affect you when you get a reversal?
Well, I think in our lives we're always being graded. You know, our whether it's by a court or in other capacities. So I take it very seriously. In filling out this application, I can tell you that every time I had to write down a list one of the opinions where I was reversed, there was a little pang in my heart. I review my reversals. I am up to date on where I have been reversed. I take it seriously, and I try to learn each time from that. There have been very few that I've really disagreed with. I think that there have been times when I have missed something, frankly, and should have caught it, and I appreciate the direction that I'm given when I receive that. It's nicer to be affirmed, but we learn from our mistakes, and the point is to learn from them, not to repeat them.
Hi, Judge.
Yes, ma'am.
You've talked a lot about the rule of law and following the rule of law. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about stare decisis and where you think that falls in line.
Okay, well, I touched on a little bit with Gamble, and really it's the starting place, right? It's the body of law that we know and we can depend on, that, when you're a lawyer and you're advising litigants, you're telling them, well, this is the precedent, this is what you can count on. So it's something to take very seriously and generally to follow. In rare circumstances, when you look at the underpinnings of where that precedent comes from, there may be times to go against that, but that's few and far between, and it would certainly be a very serious starting point with any opinion that I would write.
Do you think you'd have trouble if you were on a panel of 3, say you were selected for the position? Do you think you would have trouble if there was binding precedent, say from the 5th, and so without an en banc decision, then you would need to affirm? But the other 2 judges who would be senior to you on the panel wanted to affirm and just PCA, and you just thought that the case was wrongly decided. Do you think it would be, how would you approach that situation? Let me rephrase.
Well, if I felt strongly enough about it, I'd try to change their mind. But I'm not intimidated by those who've come before me. I respect seniority, but I'm not a new or novice judge at this point. I can find my voice, and I try to do so in a way that may be hopefully persuasive and not argumentative. But following the law is what we do. And if I felt that there was pressure in any way, it's not something that I'm going to respond to. I'm certainly open to other perspectives, and if they feel strongly and I'm 2-1, I'd want to know why and where they were coming from. But my judicial philosophy is mine, and I'm not going to be bullied or pressured or pushed to do something that's wrong. We have to do what's right.
Oh, sorry, you just jogged my memory on something.
Uh-oh.
Am I taking over? I tend to do this, don't give me too much rope. Did y'all come out with the breathalyzer decision or no?
We did.
What happened, Judge? I haven't read it, honestly, I was looking for it yesterday.
Well, I dissented.
Who else dissented?
I read the dissenting opinion, and I think there were 3 others that dissented with me.
Can you talk about it?
I'm not sure if the time frame has lapsed for it to be reconsidered by the 5th.
Okay.
So
I
I would be
couldn't find
hesitant
it.
to do so.
Okay, fair enough. I'll look for it when it comes out.
But I have the ability to dissent.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. I'll let my fellow
Thank you,
commissioners
Mr.
know.
Sully.
Judge, I guess the question I've got, this is your first time applying to this committee, right?
Yes, sir.
So we've had a couple of openings earlier this year for 2 positions, so I'm just curious, why now?
I thought I would be asked that. So sometimes you have to determine when the right time is, and it can depend on a number of factors. And one factor was that before I applied to be a circuit judge, I wanted to make sure that I had a variety of experiences in the different areas in which I felt I would need to be experienced. I've just finished a circuit civil rotation. I had not done circuit civil as a judge before, and because there's so many opinions and there's such a breadth of knowledge in the civil system, I felt it was important to have concluded that division prior to my application. I also just felt that this was the appropriate time of my life, and I think there'll be plenty of other openings in the future, and I look forward to applying for them if this one is unsuccessful.
Okay. What's the longest you've taken as a judge to rule on a motion or after a trial?
We have to report to the Supreme Court when we have a pending matter for more than 60 days. I was not the judge that had the intoxilizer matter, so I'm not gonna count that because it was not I was not the lead. I have never had to report a more than 60-day delay in any of my decisions. We file that report monthly, and I have rendered a decision, to my recollection, every time within that 60-day period. I aim for 30, sometimes I'm not always successful.
Thank you.
No, go ahead.
I do have one more,
Yes,
since
sir.
we have a little bit of time. I believe I heard that you teach at the new Judges College.
I have. I
Okay.
haven't taught in a little while, but I have
Okay.
definitely done that.
Could you address that and just tell us a little bit about it, why you've done it, and what you've learned from it?
Sure. Well, you may also see that I have taught at the police academies. I've taught at the junior college and the college level. After becoming a judge, I felt that my experience in the family area in particular could be beneficial. I put myself out there as somebody who was interested in teaching, and I went through some training to teach. I found it to be really rewarding. It's been a little while since I have. I'm hopeful to get back into that again, especially now that I'm rotating back into the family division. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy especially teaching fellow judges. And it was a really rewarding opportunity and a way to give back in a way with the knowledge that I had and the experiences to hopefully help them in that transition.
If you could pick one of the current 5th DCA judges that you think that you respect the most, and that you think that your judicial philosophy and temperament would most identify with, who would you pick?
I was prepared for the Florida Supreme Court. I wasn't prepared for that one.
We'll take that answer as
We'll
well.
take that too, yes.
Can we take that one?
Sure.
Okay. So I would go with Alan Lawson, Justice Lawson, who was recently on the 5th, so I'm
He
kind of
counts,
answering
he
the
counts.
question. He is just such a great man and a good person, a good husband, a good role model for me, I think for many of us. I find his philosophy similar to my own. I find his desire to write, even though he's newly on the Supreme Court, and yet he's already done quite a bit of writing. So he would absolutely be the one.
I do want to press, which one up?
If you hadn't, I wouldn't ask.
Yeah, we all.
Let's see. I'm going to go with Jamie because I know her personally, and I'm excited to see her there.
Any other questions? Well, with that, if you would like to make some closing remarks.
I just really want to thank you for the opportunity. I know we're getting late in the day, so I really don't need to rehash any of my application. I would love for the opportunity to serve, and I believe that my resume and my experience would make me qualified to do so. I think everybody's probably qualified to do so that you've been meeting with today, but I would look forward to that opportunity, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New
Thank you.
Year.